Hey folks, and welcome to another West Yorkshire Retro Gamer. Record a video here on YouTube, and going into the summer window, we don't know what kind of transfer action is going to happen, and so I've kind of looked at some possibilities, realistic transfer targets. All championship players from last season. There's going to be obvious ones that Leeds might try and look into, you know, some of the loan players that we have from last season, Rodon being the primary, the primary first choice centre back, for example. But because of the performances of some of the players who, you know, we had on loan, and the performances of some of the players that we had that may get sold, we will need to replace them. And we've got to stick within the FFP. So, where does that leave Leeds then? There will be money to spend. We've got an ownership that can spend. So, let's have a look at a few players who I think could be decent enough signings, and I'll go through the kind of stats that they've got, the kind of ages they are, and all this kind of thing. So, starting at the top, Tommy Smodics, bit of an obvious choice in a sense. Best season of his entire career. The only downside is 28. He's 28 years old, so he's at his prime now. He's in his peak, and it's the only season where he's really been on absolute fire. Wasn't a bad player beforehand, but he's just absolutely come of age. 27 goals and 4 assists in 44 starts, playing in the 10 role, the attacking midfield role. If we were to lose Georgie Rutter, you would think that with that many goals and assists that Smodics would be a natural fit. The question is, how much do you get out of him in terms of before he starts dropping, you know, from his peak? According to FotMob, he's got a market value of 4.8 million euros, which would equate to somewhere between maybe, I don't know, £3.5 and £4 million, I would guess. So potentially an affordable option. You can't argue with the goals and assists. Playing for a team who were dreadful. You know, let's not be false here. Blackburn would have been a likely relegation contender without the goals and assists of Smodics. So, you know, he's one of those players. If you give him one chance, there's a good chance he'll take it. He did that against Leeds. We only gave him one chance in the entire match, and he took it. That's clinical. That's prolific, you know, in terms of what he can do. So as I say, age is against him, but Smodics would be, you know, a possible option. But there will be competition for him. You don't end up having 31 goal involvements in 44 matches and not attract interest outside of the championship. Moving on to the possible option if we can't get Smodics, and can't even bring his stats up with his second part of his surname, so let's put his first name in. And he's not even one of the first choices on Mads either. We're going to have to put Frockyar in. Right, there we go. Right. Mads Frockyar Jensen, currently at Preston North End. Only got signed at the start of last season, so, you know, he's not been around English football that long. He's only 24, so he's a good age. He's within that age demographic that Farker likes to sign. Little bit of a temperament issue from what I could gather, but, you know, for his debut season, he's got 11 goal involvements, 3 goals, 8 assists from the 10 role, in only 29 starts. It's not a bad return. Preston, a very inconsistent team throughout the season, but good enough for a top half finish. 41 matches in total with 29 starts. I think they only signed him for about £1 million, so I don't think Preston. I mean, he'd be on a bit of a lengthy contract, you would think. So we'd have to probably play, we'd be paying at least double. Probably be paying similar to what we would be paying for Smodics, I would have thought. If we're solely going off market value, his market value according to FootMob is 1.1 million euros. But again, what the finances like at Preston as well. I don't think Preston's finances are that great. If Leeds came in with a 5 million bid, could they really reject it based on one decent season? Don't know. But a possible option. Could that be the kind of option that would suit Farke? Like, as I say, Farke wouldn't want anyone to join that as an attitude problem. We saw it with Jed Spence. His attitude didn't fit Leeds in the end. Good player, but Farke doesn't suffer fools, and anyone that goes in with an attitude problem would potentially not last very long. But again, if we have to sell Rutter, as I said, we need someone to replace him and someone that is going to get involved in the goals and assists. Rutter ended up scoring 6 goals and about 15-16 assists. Vitally important to what we did. So, Masrokia Jensen, maybe. It's a bit of an outside shout, this one. Smodics is the more obvious option of the two. But, who knows. Right, moving on to right wingers. Morgan Whittaker just had a really good season at Plymouth. 19 goals and 8 assists from 45 starts, 46 matches in total, so 1 sub appearance. Played almost 4,000 minutes this season. He's had a very, very productive season. Plymouth will hold out for a decent fee for him, I would think. But you really can't argue with what he's done up to this point. Great season. His market value is only 3.1 million euros. But again, Plymouth would command 3 times as much, maybe 4 or 5 times as much, for the season that he's had. And it would be an obvious choice for the right wing. If we have to get rid of the likes of Nonto, I think Dan James will stay, but I think we're probably going to have to sell Nonto, and obviously Jayden Anthony, who was another winger option, albeit more left side. He's not coming back. So again, 23 years old, lots of time to get even better. I'd say such a productive season. But again, out of these 2 choices, he's probably the one we would have to fork out more money for, just about, I think. And I'll move on to the next choice in a minute, just to kind of explain. But would certainly be he's a very good attacking option on that right hand side. So I don't think that we could, if an option was to be available, if we could find the right price, I just think we may be cashed out due to FFP. I think we might get cashed out with Whittaker. But he would be, again, it depends on the money we can bring in. If we sell, and I think we will be forced to sell Somerville, Rutter and Nonto for a combined 100 million. I said this on a previous video, and if we do that, then that will keep us potentially within FFP if we do have to make a big signing on someone, any of these on this list. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Whittaker anyway. Good player, good season. Can't argue with the stats. If we can't get Whittaker now, this is a bit of a bit of an outside shout, this one. A bit of an odd one. Jesper Asprilla. Now, Asprilla, I don't know if he's related to Fassino, who obviously was a very good player back in the day. But he's only 20 years old. right winger again, like Whittaker. You know, at 20 years old, he's got all the time in the world to improve, hasn't he? 6 goals and 7 assists, but only in 28 starts. He'd played 44 matches, but only 28 of them were starts. For a breakout season for a young player like that, 13 goal involvements, it's not bad. It's not bad. He's got loads of time to get better. Fits the age demographic. Farker likes to use players between the ages of say 20 and 25. That's his ideal age bracket for his players. So Asprilla kind of just comes into it. The only problem could be trying to persuade the Pozzo family to allow him to leave. They're not gonna take a small amount of money, and his market value is a bit more expensive than some of the ones we mentioned so far. 6.2 million euros, so probably about £5 million. But again, you can't see Watford letting a kid go for less than £10 million based on getting 13 goal involvements in just 28 starts. As I say, he has featured for most of the season, featuring in 44 matches, but I think they'd command a big fee. They probably wouldn't take anything less than maybe 15 million, for the potential. But again, once the 3 big money players leave Leeds, if they leave Leeds, and that just leaves us with Dan James as a winger. We're going to need reinforcements, and yes, for Asprilla, you never know, maybe. So that would be another option for the right wing. Moving on to the left wing. Now, this may be a little controversial. Jack Clarke, former Leeds United player, left winger, 23 years old now, and the market value. Now, this is where it would be a pricey thing to have to do. His market value, according to Votmob, is 16 million euros. Now, he's been on the books at Leeds, he's been on the books at Tottenham Hotspur, been on the books at Sunderland. His talents are well known to English football. 15 goals, 4 assists in 39 starts, 40 matches in total. It's nearly a goal involvement every 2 games. You can't really argue with those figures, can you? Would he come back to Leeds? Who knows? Would Leeds take a punt on a former player? Who knows? But he, on his day, he is one of the best left wingers in the division. And he could still get better. At 23, he's still got another 3 years or so to improve even more. An obvious talent. I've seen him at Leeds. I've seen him play for Leeds, so I know what he can do. So, an expensive option, but as I say, if we bring in the kind of money that I think we're going to bring in by being forced to sell our 3 prized assets, and I'm not including Archie Gray in the sales there, he has to stay. So he's out of the equation for me. Clarke would be a top choice for me on the left wing. The other option, Johnny Rowe. Left winger for Norwich, just 21 years old, loads of time to improve. As far as I can tell, finished with 12 goals and 2 assists. So again, loads of scope to improve. And he's obviously highly thought of at Norwich. New manager coming in at Norwich, he's not going to want to lose his prize assets in the shape of Rowe, but I do believe that Norwich will possibly lose You know, some of their better players from last season. Now, it doesn't give me a market value for Rowe on FOTMob here, which is a bit unusual. But you know, we'd have to assume that you're going to have to pay double figures. You're going to have to pay at least £10 million. You would think. Why would they take anything less unless they've got some kind of financial issues? So again, you know, Johnny Rowe's probably pushing up to around the 15 million mark. You would think maybe. Very difficult to tell. But as I say, another option if we weren't going to consider Clark. Moving on to central midfielders. Now, there's been a lot of talk about getting some midfielders in that can potentially score some goals and get some assists. We're going to stick with the Norwich theme here. And we are going to have a look at Gabriel Sara. 24 years old, good demographic in terms of age. Again, he's got a market value of 18 million euros. It's about maybe 12 million pound. And from what I can gather on FOTMob, it's not totally clear, but it's looking as if it's 13 goals and 12 assists. Now, this guy is proven at this level. You know, he's had a bit like when Pirro had the 2 really good seasons at Swansea. Sara has had 2 very good seasons at Norwich, and he will attract interest. You can't argue with, you know, any player that can get double figures of goals and assists in one season is a very useful player at any level. So, you know, for me, you know, if you want some goals and assists from midfield, you know, he can play 10. He can play even defensive mid. He can play as central midfielder. I think, you know, realistically, you know, that's a player, you know, at this level that can do some real damage. So again, if the club's willing to fork out the cash and stay with, you know, if we can figure something out that does stay within the financial fair play rules, then Gabriel Sara's got to be a consideration. This next one I feel is a little bit of an outside shout because he only recently joined them permanently. Finn Azaz. Midfielder, 11 goals, 10 assists. Another player that got double figures in both. You can't argue with that. He's had a good loan spell at Plymouth. He's had a good time at Middlesbrough so far, but he's only just joined them, and this is where it makes it very difficult to get him. However, if Middlesbrough were looking to make a profit, because his market value is only 1.8 million euros, that's not even £1 million. Now, I don't know how much Middlesbrough got him for. I don't know if maybe Azaz's contract was running out or something along those lines, but Azaz has proven to be a little bit of a nuisance in that midfield area and can obviously chip in with goals and assists. So, you know, Middlesbrough could make a tidy profit on whatever they paid, if anything. And, you know, maybe something as little as £10 million. I mean, he's 23 years old. Would 10 million be seen as an acceptable figure for someone that, you know, he featured in all 46 matches this season according to FOTMob with 36 starts, over 3,000 minutes played. So, you know, he's been highly involved wherever he's played this season. Played the first half of the season at Plymouth and the second half at Middlesbrough. As I say, he's only been there since January, but it's not unusual to see players move on after after only a 6-month spell at a club. I think the rules tend to be only if you've been on loan to a couple of different clubs in a season. I don't think transfers is included in that. But again, maybe that's something Leeds would have to consider. If there are rules about how many clubs Finn Azaz can play for in a 12-month period or something, then that could cause a problem. But you can't argue with Azaz's stats. Very solid. And if the money's right, you never know. Right, moving on to right back. Now, I would offer Sam Barham a new contract. I really would. I think he's given plenty to Leeds this season. But he's not mega high on goals and assists. He's just a very, very decent fullback. Very defensively capable. But we need someone that can maybe be a little bit more progressive as well. So let's have a look at Coventry right back Milan Van Uwijk. Now, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It could be Uwijk, it could be Uvike, who knows. Anyway, fairly modest stats. 2 goals, 5 assists, 34 starts, 42 games in total. Again, only 23 years old, and I think this is something that Daniel Farke likes. He likes to buy players who fit a certain age demographic. And Leeds were linked with this fella before he moved to Coventry. There were some links that Leeds were looking at him. So a very decent first season in England, loads of time to improve. Coventry missed out on the playoffs last season. Does this guy think that he feels he could perform at a slightly higher level, going for a team that only narrowly missed out on automatic promotion, and then just missed out in the final of the playoffs? I don't know. Market value €5.3 million, about £4 million. It's, Coventry would probably demand 6, 7, 8 million, I would have thought. As I say, he's only been there one season. But proved to be a very decent, a very decent fullback for the Championship. So he'd be my first choice for right back if we were just solely targeting Championship players only. I don't think that'll happen. I think that our scouting network's more than capable of scouting outside of the Championship. But if you want Championship players, top-end Championship players, to get you out of the division, and maybe have, even if we were to get promoted, and these players then are found out to not be quite the level that we need them to be, if they're young enough, they have saleable value, teams that go down with the parachute payments would look at players like these. So you're looking at players with a sell-on value, if they're not quite Premier League standard. If you do get promoted with them, you have to look at the long-term future with every player you sign. This is why I have doubts on players of the age demographic of Sammy Smodics. How much saleable value is he going to have? Not much with his current age. But you can't argue with the stats, which is what we mentioned earlier. So, Van Uwijk, why not? Now, if we can't, this next one is a little bit left field again, in a sense. It's a bit of a weird one, but it would add a little bit more experience to the squad, and that's Darnell Furlong. 28 years old, so a bit like Smodics. It's a bit kind of thing, it's not an exciting signing by any stretch, but he won 90% of his aerial duels, 56% defensive actions, certainly got involved, for West Brom there, former QPR player for a couple of years as well, so he is experienced at this level. Only €3.7 million market value, so just 2.5 million, something like that. From what I can gather, with goals and assists, he got 5 goals and 3 assists, I believe. So again, not terrible for a fullback, and certainly would provide the it would provide some added experience to the squad. Not an exciting signing by any stretch, and doesn't have that sale-on value with him being 28. So that's why Furlong's my second choice. But he has been part of a team that has been defensively solid all season in West Bromwich Albion. That can't be ignored. So that's something to consider. So yeah, Furlong is my second choice right back option. Let's move on to centre backs then, and these are two players from the same team. Sorry, Bristol City, I'm not kind of targeting you, but your centre back pairing have been quite decent, haven't they? So we'll start with the better of the two, or seemingly the better of the two, anyway. Rob Dickie, 28 years old, so again, not really having much sale on value, but 5 goals and 1 assist. Featured in over 40 matches in the season. Again, quite experienced at this level. You know, Queen's Park Rangers again before joining Bristol City. And again, you know, it's a centre back that, you know, he's got the experience at this level. So if you want a little bit of aerial prowess and you know, something that's going to be effective, then yeah, Rob Dickie might be a decent option. You know, I don't think that he's going to carry the ball forward like Rodon was able to, or anything like that. But it could be an option. I think there will be other central defensive options. He's a big dude, is Dickie. I mean, he's 191 centimetres, so he's very tall. Would provide that little bit of aerial prowess. And again, five goals for a centre back with an assist. It's not bad. So that would be a possible option. And now let's have a look at his defensive partner, Rob Atkinson. 25 years old, so a little bit younger than Dickie. 4 goals and 1 assist, so slightly less on that one, but he only started 25 matches and played 26 in total, so that's really not bad. Only just over 2,000 minutes played this season. Been there a couple of years now as well. He joined in July 2021 apparently. And again, another big fella, 193 centimetres tall, and again, you know, the right kind of age bracket, and he would probably cost less than Dickie as well, according to this. 94% defensive actions, goals, 99% of his actions, shot attempts was pretty low, 98% aerial duels won. I mean, it's he's got some stats, this fella, so could be an option. Could be an option, Rob Atkinson. It's a bit of a left field one, you know. Not many people will be looking at that and thinking, oh yeah, exciting signing or anything like that. But if he can do a job, if he can be a solid defender and be an aerial threat, you know, that's got to be considered. If he'd have played the full season, he'd have had close to double figures in goal involvements. So that's just something to consider. Right, let's move on to left backs then, and the first one's going to be a name that's going to be very familiar to Leeds fans, or certainly any Leeds fan that followed Leeds' youth teams. And that's Niall Huggins. Now, 23 years old. Now, he only got 1 goal and 1 assist, but he only started 17 matches. He did get a bit of a nasty injury. Now, Sunderland picked him up very cheaply from Leeds, just a few $100,000, when his contract was running relatively low. And Huggins always looked very useful in Leeds' under-23 team at the time, under-21s, whatever it was. And as I say, a bit like Jack Clark, still only 23. I think the two of them came through the youth ranks together, I think, Huggins and Clark. Could be wrong on that. I think they had one season where they played together. But when Sunderland played against Leeds, the first of the 2 matches of the season, Huggins and Clark played together on the left-hand side, and they were dangerous. the kind of partnership that Somerville and Firpo have had on our left-hand side, these two weren't far off it. Clark and Huggins, they know each other really well. You know, they've played together, and they're effective. They are an effective left side. You know, his market value, according to this, is only €850,000. That's nothing in this day and age. And with more game time, if he could avoid injuries, that 1 goal and 1 assist that he got in 17, you know, you'd be looking at least 3 goals, 3 assists, maybe even more if he played a full season. And that link-up play with Clark, that understanding that the two of them have. So there's method behind my choice here. I think that if we were to spend some money and getting Clark and Huggins back to the club, you know, they're both the right kind of age demographic that Farker likes. And I think that Somerville and Firpo will leave, so I wouldn't be against Clark and Huggins replacing Somerville and Firpo if it has to happen. So yeah, for me, you know, it's not spectacular, 1 goal, 1 assist, but I saw what they could do together as a partnership on that left hand side. Very, very dangerous at this level, and lots of time to improve as well, and saleable value later on in time as well if needed. So yeah, Huggins would be my first choice left back. Now this final choice is a very weird one. I didn't expect to be finding any players from Queen's Park Rangers. No offence to Queen's Park Rangers, but they've got a left back, 26 years old, in Kenneth Powell. Suriname Dutch. As I said, 26-year-old, 4 goals and 1 assist in 44 matches for a team who, you know, if we're going to be totally honest, struggled for most of the season. Not taking anything away from Cifuentes, he comfortably got them out of trouble in the end, and fair play to him. But Powell could be a bit of a outside option in a sense. You know, no one's going to really look at Powell and think, right, yeah, we'll take him. You know, he's a player that will have gone under the radar, but reasonably experienced. You know, he joined QPR in June 2022, so he's actually been there a couple of seasons, and that was on a free transfer apparently. So his market value is only €3 million. It's about 2.2 million ish, thereabouts. It wouldn't cost a great deal to get him, I don't think. And again, you know, could be a good squad player. 5 goal involvements, it's not terrible. And again, if we have to sell Firpo, who has been a bit of an assist machine this season, then we need to look at someone that is going to get involved in the goals. So Kenneth Powell would be my secondary option there. So yeah, just a few possible realistic player targets for Leeds United. As I say, they're all championship players, players that have caught the eye for whatever reason this season. The stats don't lie. You know, we have to be realistic on this. The stats do not lie. There's a variety in terms of the type of club that these players have played for this last season just gone as well. It's not just been targeting the ones that finished in the top half that didn't get promoted or anything like that. You know, there's a variety of players that have had decent seasons. And, you know, if we ended up getting one of each of these positions, so a 10, a right winger, a left winger, a central midfielder, a right back, a centre back and a left back, and if they all ended up being ones out of this list, you've got to believe that's not a bad signing at this level. We have to be realistic. We're not going to be signing, you know, top half Premier League players. I wish we were, but got to be realistic. So yeah, there we go, folks. Make of this what you will. Do I think we'll sign any of these? I wouldn't have thought so. I don't know. I think Leeds' scouting network will be quite more diverse than just targeting players in the Championship. Um, I don't really think anyone expected us to get Ethan Ampadu, for example, from Chelsea. But we spent 6 million on him. He was never going to get a look in at Chelsea, obviously. Um, but as I say, I mean, out of all of those, we have been linked with Milan van Nieuwijk before now. So that wouldn't be a mega surprise if we got him. But I think all of these others, you've got to look at the attacking ones there in Smodics and Whittaker and Clark, maybe Rowe. Those are the kind of players that some of the Premier League teams will be looking at, and if they are, then we probably don't stand a chance of getting them. Got to be realistic on that. However, let's hope that we can trust our scouting network. The scouting team will have far better knowledge and options than what I can come up with as a fan. But I would, if any of these joined, I wouldn't be too disappointed. The defenders have all been part of teams that have conceded less than 60 goals this season. The attacking players have, their individual stats speak for themselves. So, that has to be considered. And as I say, I mean, could you imagine a squad that had all of these in their squad? You're well on your way to having a very high standard Championship squad there, aren't you? Very, very high standard Championship squad. That'd be a dangerous bunch of players there. You're looking at us. You've got half a squad there. You'd only have to chuck a bunch of goalkeepers in there and a couple more central midfielders and a couple of strikers, and you've got a full squad. So, good standard of players for the level that we're going to be playing this next season. So I would be reasonably alright with any of these, if any of these joined us. So we'll see what happens. As I say, my preference would be to keep what we've got, but I have to be realistic. I don't think we will. And I think we have to sell at least one mega asset to stay within FFP if we are to make some additional signings. So there we go, folks. That's just my thoughts on possible realistic player targets for Leeds United for this summer. Let's see what happens. Let's hope that Leeds make all the necessary player signings that they have to. We have to get out of this division this next season coming. If we don't, I mean, it's a 3-year thing, isn't it? If you don't go back up within the 3 years that you've got any kind of parachute payment, yes, we've got good ownership, but I mean, yeah, we got promoted not being a parachute team when Bielsa was in charge, but Bielsa, a fantastic coach, got way more out of a bunch of mid-table Championship players than anyone could have ever hoped for. Farker is not of that level, but Farker is experienced of getting teams out of this division. So let's see what happens. Put your thoughts in the comments below. Please be respectful about it all. Don't put anything silly in there. What players would you like to see join Leeds United this season? Do you think that these players listed here could do a job for us? Do you think any of these are not realistic, and if so, for what reason? Do please let me know in the comments. But in the meantime, big thank you for all the support as always. Do please hit the like button. Do please subscribe to the channel. It all helps. We're only I think we're just 2 away from 100 subscribers. So if you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. I'll dish out more football content, more video game content. I'll get it all out on the channel. So some great stuff coming up. So do please keep an eye out for it all. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your weekend. See you in the next one. Bye bye.